Welcome. Glad you're here. This is Dr. Norm McVeigh speaking. You've been listening to the music of Scott Borders. You'll also find this, by the way, on our website at iBlissnow.com. This podcast series is entitled High-Tech Alchemy, a study in high magic and altered states. The codes that unlock the treasure. The truth is hiding in plain sight. And this is podcast number 2, copyrighted by iBlissnow LLC, 2018, all rights reserved. Our website, iBlissnow.com. And so, in number 1 of the podcasts, we covered an introductory or an overview to what's going to be covered. I won't go over that again. And I'll also mention that we're using our Smart Pill energetic mix in the background. And it aids in data comprehension, increased focus, and super learning. So that's there for you. And I'll give you Nikola Tesla again. If you want to find out the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Okay. So you've probably heard of the law of attraction, and that is that you attract, essentially speaking, you attract what state you're in. So if you are an apathetic person, you attract apathy. If you are energetic, let's say enthusiastic, you attract people, objects, and situations that are enthusiastic or bring about enthusiasm. If you're a fearful person, you attract fearful people or fearful situations. It's your ground of being. It's your, let's call it primary state of being. And essentially that's law of attraction. It's how to move up your energy field or your resonant point from wherever you are up higher, so you'll attract things that you want more. This is covered a lot, by the way, in my book on energy psychology, which is available also. That covers this in a lot more depth. But essentially, I want to say that that's what it's about. It's about raising your point of attraction from the low part of the scale down around death and apathy and resignation up to the higher levels of where you attract the things that work better for you and operate better and that are of your desire, as opposed to the lower scale, which is of your resistance. So sorry to break that to you, but yeah, that's the way it is. And so that's essentially the law of attraction. But to understand it fully, we really need to get underneath it and see what the underpinnings are of the law of attraction. So first is the law of energy. Okay, and the law of energy is that an energy field emitting from a substance or object is the same as the substance or object. In other words, the energetic signature emitting from an object or substance, the signature of it is in microcosm what the macrocosm energy is emitting from the actual physical object. And you'll achieve the same result from an energetic signature from an object or substance that's mega amplified without distortion. And what you feel is real. So in other words, if you were to take, let's say, reishi mushrooms, one of my favorite, and you were to take that and you had equipment to print the energetic emission from reishi mushrooms, and then you amplified it, let's say, by a few billion times, you will have, let's say, a large respect, if not an entire respect, of what the reishi mushroom is, and it will affect the same on your body. Now, to say that we're there yet, or that the technology on this planet is there yet, no, we're not there yet. But we're getting there, and that's really the important thing, and what we're finding is exactly that law of energy. So that is really the way it is. You have to have an amplifier that can amplify a substance, whether that's magic mushrooms, whether that's reishi mushrooms, whether that's vitamin C, whether that is, let's say a sacred geometric structure. No matter what that is, no matter whether that's a picture of a substance or a picture of, let's say, Sedona. If you have a picture of Sedona and you take it and amplify the energetics coming off that picture, you will have essentially the same experience as being on the vortexes of Sedona. And I've done this. And I've gone there and energetically printed 19 vortexes. And anyway, so that I can let you know that was put into a video, audios, and JPEGs, and that's exactly how it goes. Okay, so next is law of frequency. And frequency is but one quality of a substance. I get a little edgy and a little crazy sometimes when people speak of something. They say the frequency of spirulina or the frequency of melatonin. Well, frequency of a let's say a substance is about like saying, I saw the cat's tail, therefore I understand the cat. Frequency is just but one aspect, one fractal of a larger body. And so saying that, I know the frequency of love, that is just like saying, well, I have the cat's cat box, and therefore I know the cat. Sorry, but that just came out. Anyway, it's one aspect. It's better, to know the cat's tail. You know something about the cat, but there's so much more to the cat than the tail, right? So anyway, the frequency is but one quality of a substance, a person, or an object. Wave shape, direction of spin of the energy, the variation of the spin, the pattern of variation, the energetic oscillation, and whether this is a vertical or horizontal energetics, which I will talk about later, are determined when you know all those factors, plus a few more. And vertical just means a vertical field is essentially very much like electrical field, which is harmful to the body. And a horizontal field is beneficial to the body. So an example of a vertical field is a cell phone. Sorry, folks. Horizontal field is Sedona. Just giving you a comparison between the two. So the law of vibration. Now, when one object is stimulated, all identical objects in its vicinity will vibrate with that same identical vibration. And you've seen that, obviously the example of that where you find, let's say, a clock, and the clock is, you have one clock that's ticking a particular way, the pendulum's going back and forth, and when you set that up amongst a number of other clocks, they all now come into that particular back and forthness, they all go into sync. Or another one is you pluck a string on a guitar. Let's say it's an acoustic guitar. And then if there's a guitar next to it, that same chord will start to vibrate on the one next to it. So law of vibration. Now we'll get into this a lot more in depth, and you'll see how this all applies. So right now you might be in the confusion, overwhelmed position about this, but it'll sort itself out, and we'll start connecting dots after we laid some groundwork. Law of identities. Any energetic action that stimulates a substance, person, or object will affect all identical substances, persons, or objects. An identical copy of that substance, let's say a picture, of that substance, person, or object serves as a witness and will direct the stimulation to the substance, person, or object that it is a copy of. And this goes way, way, way back where people said, primitive people so-called, said, don't take a picture of me, you'll steal my soul. This goes back to the voodoo doll, and I studied this some in Dominican Republic, that if you make a doll out of a person's saliva, fingernails, hair, etc., blood, if you got it, and then you do something to the doll, it will happen to the person. There's more to it than that. This is slightly simplistic, but I want to make this point here because it's so germane and so vital to what we're going to be discussing in the future. If what your goal is to know the secrets of the universe, then this is where it starts. Okay, and in radionics, if you've studied that, you know that they use a Polaroid in those earlier days when I was giving the lectures at the U.S. Psychotronics Association. In those early days, you took a Polaroid picture of the person, and then you used that for the witness, and that sent the energy to that person. A lot more to be said about that. Law of release. This came directly out of our research, as all of this has. An acupoint output or outputs black energy during trauma. And when the trauma is released, the output or the acupoint outputs white light. This is a huge breakthrough in the area of energy psychology, in that we have equipment and funds that we had, virtually an unlimited amount of funds, instrumentation, and personnel is how we discovered this. We'll get more into this, how this relates. The law of time. Time is not linear. It is possible to go, quotes, to go into the future and cause an effect, quotes again, in the past, and those effects shape your present. That's retrocausality. And you'll see if you look into retrocausality, you'll learn a lot more about it. I'm involved with remote viewing and remote influencing with the Applied Precognition Project under physicist Marty Rosenbaum or Rosenblatt, and it's just really good. Sorry for messing your name, Marty, but I didn't think I was going to bring this up, but it comes right up in this. I have to acknowledge you in your group for all that I've learned in it. It's been incredible. So it's a great group, and they do remote viewing and going into the future and working on affecting the past, so-called, which affects the present. Well, I'd like to mention one other thing, and this is not a law, but this is life force, or orgone energy, from Dr. Wilhelm Reich. And Dr. Reich, who is an MD and a PhD, totally brilliant, he had something called an orgone accumulator, or various orgone devices, various orgone shooters. He's essentially concentrated life force. And they work without electricity. Brilliant guy. And in our analysis in the lab with equipment that we have now, we've determined that there are 12 fundamental frequencies or fields or colors to life force. And to call it orgone, to call it life force, it has to have all 12 fields. And all 12 fields create a holism, or something that is synchronistically or synergistically greater than any of the parts. Now I want to go to the part that you've all been waiting for. You've been just kind of ho-humming me through some of this. I can figure. You're going, well, I hope this stuff aligns. I hope this guy's just not leading us to a dead end. So, okay, the part you've been looking for, the law of wealth. Okay, tap your coins on the table. This is an energy frequency, a wealth frequency, that is directly attributed to wealth, both spiritual and physical. And you could be born with it. And this is what you could find out with astrology. Or it could be aftermarket energy grafted to you and to your energy field to give you that particular wealth aspect. And it would be the same as being born with those particular aspects in your chart. It would be the same as having those particular aspects, creating that particular energy, which is the wealth factor. And this has not been discussed in anything I've ever seen before. This is Egyptian in nature. And when I tell you about this and walk you through it, it's just hiding in plain sight. But it makes a huge, huge difference. And you'll see exactly how it operates. It's just, and you'll see how people over the ages, the secret of the ages, as Manly Palmer Hall describes it, this factor, though he didn't describe it clearly, but he had an inkling of what it was. And this is the secret of secrets that goes all the way through. How you acquire wealth, and illumination, and spiritual well-being, physical health, physical well-being, through a particular frequency or band of frequencies. And those frequencies can be generated by sacred geometry. They can be generated by astrology. And they can be generated through a number of other aspects too. But I won't want to go into those right yet. But that's what you have to look forward to, is the explanation on that, including the demonstration of that. So essentially, through applying a quantum supercomputer, we're able to digitize alchemy, magic, sacred geometry. And I'll stop there on sacred geometry just to let you know, you can build a tetrahedron or a Great Pyramid of Giza in your backyard that's 100 feet tall. And you're welcome to do so. I don't want to help you in the project because it's going to need a lot of labor. Or what you can do is you can build a 3D tetrahedron Great Pyramid of Giza with a supercomputer. A super quantum computer will build that, and you can mine or farm the energy from it without having to go ahead with hammer and nails and build it in your yard. I mean, what would the neighbors think? They'd be out there venerating, I don't know, you have to have all these people mushing up the side of the pyramid with these rocks and stones. It's going to be overwhelming. The health department and the building department is going to probably be looking at you fairly closely. What is this guy up to? What's this girl up to? So anyway, but I just want to tell you, that's the breakthrough on the quantum supercomputers, being able to build sacred geometry that's 100 feet tall in virtual space and to mine the energy from it. Huge breakthrough. Next comes altered states, and it's a huge breakthrough in altered states because most of that sacred geometry in the courses I've ever taken in sacred geometry are so theoretical they're boring. Because why? Because how do you use them in real life? How do they make a difference in your life? How do they change the quality of your experience? How do they release traumatic cellular memory? How can they help you increase your wealth? How do they allow you to expand your experience, to let go of self-limiting beliefs, to let go of judgments? You can see I've been trained essentially as a clinical psychologist here when I go through this information, but that's where my heart lies in some of that. But the sacred geometry, the way we play it, generates altered states of consciousness and fulfills the goal of energy psychology. And it does it in a really, really phenomenal way. I'd like to mention something. Well, let's see, should I do that? Yeah, just because we're on the subject of energy psychology, this would be so cool. Let's see. So if for those that are familiar with emotional freedom technique and EMDR, particularly thought field therapy and emotional freedom techniques, know that what you're doing is tapping on acupoints. Well, rather than physically tapping, we did this experiment, and we got some test subjects, and we used a TENS device, a trans-electronic neurostimulator, which puts out an electrical pulse. No great energy of any kind, just electrical pulse. And what we did is we put patches with gel, contact gel, on all the EFT acupuncture points. And it took us about a half hour to do that. And we gave it a zap. And yeah, it was very fast on release and you didn't have to tap. But we knew of another, 300 or so points that all related to that as well. And so we started putting on electrodes for 300 points. After about 4 hours, we were so exhausted, and so were the subjects, that we just wanted to go home. And essentially, we got maybe 75 or 80, maybe a little closer to 100 wired up. We hit the switch, and bang, that microcurrent went through those points, and our subjects were all of a sudden unstressed. Okay? That is a lot to tell you about it. So we've taken this out further to allow the access of those 350 points through an app that stimulates those points by finding the frequency, wave shape, and sacred geometry, color, and a lot of other characteristics of each one of those points. It took us about 5 years. And so you can get an app, and you can even get a demonstration of it on our website that does those all automatically without the contact gel, without having to wire up, without a couple $1,000 device, and without all the sweat, blood, sweat, and tears that some of our subjects went through. So I appreciate that, subjects, but no more. So that's possible. So I just had to put that in there. I couldn't help it, because energy psychology has evolved into specific, measurable, and easily non-subtle but very experiential effects. In other words, subtle energy was called that because it was so subtle most people couldn't feel it. But now things have changed dramatically with the advent of quantum amplification. We've been able to get 1 billion times amplification on a subtle signal. Huge difference. So essentially, we're fulfilling the goals of ancient metaphysical science. In Manly Palmer Hall, called The Secret of the Ages. And I will show you what I believe to be the secret or secrets of the ages. This is brought up to the present moment and proven through the advent of quantum physics in superquantum computing. So I hope you're doing less of the bewilderment here and some excitement starting to build, because we're going to get into some really, really cool topics. And again, if these were covered someplace else, I wouldn't be spending my time on it. I'd rather be surfing, or working in the lab, or bicycling, or sailboarding, or doing some of the things I love. I'm only doing this because essentially the job is calling me and it needs to be done. So I will call it enough for this particular podcast number 1, or actually it's podcast number 2. Podcast 1 was the intro. And so if you haven't heard the intro yet, go back, listen to the intro, because it'll give you a good sense of what's coming. And I really appreciate all your emails and all your research out there. I could never pay all the research associates all the money they deserve for research in all the different locations, quantum physics labs and labs throughout the world that have worked with some of our theories and shown their practical application. So I want to thank you at this point for those. So anyway, I will see you on the next podcast. And this is Dr. Norm McVeigh, iBlissnow, saying thanks for listening.